We are back with more NFL coverage, and in this one, I'll be covering the wild card weekend action. And man, even with being out of commission slightly, having wisdom teeth get removed and everything like that, you still felt a lot of the potential chaos in this one. I mean, you were saying it beforehand, even when we look back at the overall playoff picture. Like I said, you're getting best on best. You are getting absolutely intriguing matches through and through. There's not a major separator between one team and the other in this entire playoff picture, and that led to, at least for the first few games there, quite a few heaters. Starting out with the Rams versus the Panthers, and man, I was genuinely surprised at how the Panthers ended up performing in this game, considering how things started for them. I mean, when I got into watching the game live, they were already down 7-0 after a Pukanakwa touchdown, and they started to get a decent run going with Chuba Hubbard. But after that, a lot of the same habits started to be enforced. They had lost Ikem Ekwonu, one of their offensive linemen, early, and he would be out for the rest of the game, which allowed the Rams to bring even more pressure Bryce Young's way. And with those guys coming off the edge, and Verse, Fisk, and Turner even through the middle, relative to his size, he's not going to compete with that more often than not. And that got in his mind early and often in this game. Now, to continue on the next drive, as you would have Puna Ford get back there and bring him in the backfield. And while they started to make a little bit of progress, unfortunately, it would be overturned with a very, very tough throw. And just, he was looking for a pretty good route here. And while it was solid at best, you had Durant all over the throw, and unfortunately he was able to get his hands on it for the interception to give the Rams the ball back. From there, they started to initiate some ball control themselves before having Pukanakwa get in the end zone with an extension of the run. They called it a rushing touchdown. It was essentially a swing route and a backwards pass. You just weave through the entire defense, and he had accounted for so many yards in terms of passing through the air already for them. And it's like, I got very confused at what the Panthers are trying to do. At multiple points in this game, I don't know. Like, there were times where they would properly put J.C. Horn on the man, and even Michael Jackson Sr. at times. We'll get to Michael Jackson Sr. in a second. But then you would have others where they just refused to man him up at all, or they put linebackers like Christian Roseboom and Cherilus on him. And I'm like, okay, in those moments, you know Stafford's going to look that way. Like, that's such a mismatch. You think any linebacker in the NFL is going to keep up with Pukanakwa. Even if he's not considered a burner, the man is going to be much faster, and he has similar frames to these people. So I don't really understand that at all. But nevertheless, despite them being down 14-0 early, the Panthers were able to get themselves on the board, mainly with the help of their pair of wide receivers in both Jalen Coker and Tyrod McMillan. As, I mean, you would expect it from McMillan, making his playoff debut, getting a few good catches in. But Coker was automatic for most of this game. And it's interesting to think about. They kept on mentioning how he was an undrafted wide receiver out of Holy Cross last year. And again, throughout the entire season, especially in the latter stretch with some of the Panthers games I've been tuning into, he's become a pretty solid piece for them. And Xavier Leggett has really gotten lost in all of that conversation. But maybe that's not a terrible thing for the Panthers in this scenario. Because, again, sometimes, man, all it takes for you is to find that one diamond in the rough, and you can quite possibly save an entire draft class, depending on how it goes. Although I will concede that the Panthers, they had an okay draft last year. And Coker just solidified their, gamble to take a risk with the potential reward of him in undrafted free agency last season. But it would be Chuba Hubbard to get them in the end zone from a 1-yard rushing touchdown, and the Rams would be able to drive back down the field themselves, aided mainly by just having Tyler Higbee, of all people, break extremely wide open in broken coverage and get down the field for a 36-yard gain before Mavis got a 36-yard field goal to go. The Panthers struggled to run the football for most of the game, which is what I would probably think hurt them the most here. And it didn't help as well that even when they were able to make a few good stops defensively, granted with some weird misses from Matthew Stafford at a point, you had Trevor Etienne muff the damn punt and give them clean opportunity in field position in their side of the territory to take at least a 2-possession lead, if not more. Maybe extend this to 3 possessions, get a touchdown. And this is right around the 2-minute warning. So any number of things could have happened for the Rams in this sequence to give them the highest possible opportunity to win the game, just outright. Like, they'd had the Panthers kept at bay for most of this time, and they'd need a few lucky breaks on their front if they were going to be able to get back into this. And I will say, in condensed form, this entire sequence right here is what shifted the game. Because you have them get backed up on 3rd and 12, and while they get close enough, while they want to be aggressive and go for it on 4th down in this situation, I mean, you can't not. Sean McVay's going to trust his guys in that scenario, and they're deep in the red zone now, with them having an opportunity to take this kind of lead. So you live with the chances. But oh man, once Matthew Stafford just zipped this pass incomplete, and credit to Wanham for getting the deflection here. Like, I didn't expect him to get out in coverage and make the play. But once that happened, the entire game shifted on its head. All of a sudden, the Panthers, with Jalen Coker streaking down the field on a post route, and then Bryce Young breaking free of pressure from Verse and all those guys for a 16-yard scramble for a score. Nobody was catching him in open space. And that's where Bryce Young was able to make an impact in terms of, allowing his legs to open up everything else for the offense as a whole. That got it down to 17-14, and what a swing that was, because the Panthers just kept it rolling. They got right into a 3-and-out before tying up the game on a 7-minute drive with a field goal of their own. And while the Rams would respond, it didn't come without some chaos. I think you had Matthew Stafford at a point. He was kind of getting banged up the entire time. And there was a situation where he hit his finger on somebody's helmet, and that got him kind of, out of rhythm in a sense. I don't know. You just had some inexplainable misses from him, but they were still good enough to drive down the field here and ultimately get Mavis in field goal range for a 42-yard field goal. And then you would have the chaos ramp up even further as, Chuba Hubbard was so wide open on this 4th down attempt that there was just no reason for him to drop this. But I digress. You would still have that be followed up by them just completely unloading on Matthew Stafford. Like, as good as he has been against the blitz all season long, they were able to get after him at a few points of time. And you had Travis Gibson Sr. get him down for a sack before having Michael Jackson Sr. work one of his passes. Michael Jackson Sr. has been a thorn in his side all season long. We go back to the last game between these two teams, and he definitely made an impact there. Also, surprisingly enough, they mentioned that he, going into this game, led the NFL in pass breakups on the year with 19. So you love to see the former Seahawk getting shit done alongside a guy considered to be a number 1 caliber corner in J.C. Horn. And that alone would keep the Panthers alive in this. Not to mention Jalen Coker showing up once again, just veering right over the middle of the field and getting an additional yard, just a great addition of yards after the catch for what would ultimately be a 52-yard gain before Chuba Hubbard got a touchdown for them to take the lead early in the fourth quarter. Matthew Stafford was able to lock in at a little bit of time, with Devontae Adams getting deep for a 23-yard gain, and they just continued to pound the rock before hitting Kyren Williams on a Texas route for a 13-yard touchdown run out of the backfield. Well, catch and run out of the backfield. Oh, man, this possession would be a little tough and would nearly put the game on ice, as the Panthers would go 3 and out, with the Rams getting the ball past the halfway point of the fourth quarter. And I'm thinking to myself, if they can let some clock bleed here, if they can start to run the ball a little bit with Kyren Williams and or Blake Corum, right, they could turn this all the way down. They could end the game right then and there. Instead, they would, at least, at the very least, get some of that to go. They were bailing out slightly with a Puka catch, but they started to work themselves backwards. This holding penalty did not help things, but they couldn't move out of that position. They couldn't really get a lot of that penalty yardage back up until they were able to get Blake Corum for a decent enough gain to give themselves some room to punt here. Unfortunately for them, Isaiah Simmons is such a versatile player, even with him not really being good enough to warrant a starting caliber job on this team. He was recently picked up off the practice squad, and you have to love what he did in this game, because not only did he have a great special teams tackle in space earlier in the game, but this play right here, for him to get up on this play and block this Ethan Evans punt and give the Panthers a short field when it felt like the game was over, oh, that was huge. And that crowd exploded as you had Jalen Coker take a corner route on Cameron Curl into the end zone for a 7-yard touchdown catch. They were on cloud 9. The thing is, again, you have to give the Panthers a ton of respect. I don't think anybody expected them to take it to the Rams like this in a playoff setting. Even if they got the win against them the first time in the regular season. Like, all these stakes on the line, and, Bryce Young as well deserves some credit too, even with him going through some early struggles with his, first playoff game in his career. Noted, like, that's fair. He still overcame that and got them in a go-ahead position. And that's all that you can ask for. In retrospect, it's Matthew Stafford. They kept on mentioning the graphic about how he is the active leader amongst current passers in the NFL in game-winning drives in the fourth quarter and overtime, regardless of regular season or postseason. He does this shit. And I didn't understand the methodology at first, but with the way that the Rams were playing it, they kept taking chunks and chunks of gains down the field. Just not even really trying to force the action. They still had a decent amount of their timeouts at their disposal, but they were just taking exactly what the defense gave them. That is the epitome of it. And they kept getting gain after gain after gain down the field. Interestingly enough, they actually hit up Kanata Mumpfield for an 11-yard gain, and I'm thinking, okay, that's a pretty interesting time to give him the football in his first postseason catch. Nevertheless, on the very next play, they were so spaced out defensively, and granted, you're not trying to have anything get behind you. You want everything out in front of you. However, Trayvon Mayrig, that is, he's guarding the former Seahawk and Colby Parkinson on this play, and they throw it in his direction. He almost boxes him out. Mayrig, he's trying to play it so well, he's trying to force him out of bounds, but he has no way of getting to the football. And Parkinson, using that big frame, he hauls it over him and manages to secure the catch while falling over into the end zone for a score in quite the chaotic situation. With just 38 seconds left, the Rams have the lead back themselves. They take a field goal lead, and while the Panthers are definitely trying to get themselves in field goal range with 3 timeouts as well. It was not going to be easy. It ended in the most anticlimactic of ways. The Panthers had been facing that pressure all day long, and they'd had some success with it. However, the Rams were not going to hesitate in that scenario. They sent that fucking heat his way. And on the first couple of plays, I don't know. Those were just very awkward looking, and there wasn't much that he could do there. But then these 3rd and 4th down plays, both of them to Jimmy Horn Jr., those are just roughings. Like, even with Bryce Young facing that heat, he's doing as much as he can. Especially when you look at the 4th down. Man, he's trying to hit Jimmy Horn Jr. in stride. I can't really explain how he drops that pass. And I will say that it's like, okay, you want your defense to clutch up in that situation because you're up by, at that time, 4 points. You're expecting them to close out the game for you. And they don't. Even if Jimmy Horn Jr. catches that ball, does he have enough speed to get out of bounds in time? Does he have enough speed to turn upfield maybe, knowing that you have 3 timeouts still, and get closer into field goal range for Ryan Fitzgerald, who granted has, been clutch for them all season long. But if he manages to get even a few more yards there, you're still looking at somewhere near a 60-yard field goal. And in those conditions, I don't know if that would have made a lot of sense. It came down to the wire, and that's the theme for some of the first few games of this, across the entire wild card weekend. But the Rams, with that experience alone, and I guess that's ultimately what it comes down to, right? They would outlast this Panthers team 34-31. No way they were thinking that they had to say that about themselves, but it is what it is. You can't get greedy in these scenarios, and you can't beg and choose in the playoffs. A win is most certainly a win in these times, and they would advance to the divisional round, where, being the first team to do so, they'd have to await, other results and see how they went before figuring out what their matchup would be. So in this game, for numbers real quick, Matthew Stafford had 304 passing yards along with 3 touchdowns and an interception on 57.1% completion, which is abnormally low for him, but that's a testament to how the Panthers were doing overall. They ran for 116 yards and 4 yards of pop on the ground, along with a touchdown from Puka Nacua, as I mentioned. Puka Nacua also accounted for 10 receptions and 111 yards with a score. Devontae Adams had 5 receptions and 72 yards, although he would be taken out after Nick Scott targeted him, the former Ram. Literally, he had no reason to knock him out on the sidelines like that. It was a fair penalty there. I don't believe that he came in for the rest of the game as they put him in concussion protocol. So that's definitely unfortunate. Cameron Curl and Nate Landman had 10 tackles, each for the Rams as well. For the Panthers, though, numbers for them, 264 yards and a touchdown, along with an interception for Bryce Young on 52.5% completion, along with a rushing touchdown. It wasn't the cleanest game for him. And granted, with the way that they performed overall as a team, they gave Los Angeles a run for their money. Even with having a losing record coming into this thing, they have to be proud of the way that they performed in this game. And, they're still a young football team. They're just getting started here. They just, if only they had a much cleaner, entry into the playoffs. Maybe they could have been taken a little more seriously. I'm not sure. But when push came to shove, when they needed plays to be made, those guys stepped up. Coker stepped up. Bryce Young stepped up when he needed to. Chuba Hubbard stepped up when he needed to. That defense has usually been good all season long. It was a bad time for them to give up a play like that, but it does happen. I don't know. The opportunities are going to come back around for them as long as they do what they need to do in the regular season. Impressive game from Jalen Coker. NFL playoff debut for him, and he had a 9-reception, 134-yard game with a score. Like, that's definitely solid. Meanwhile, McMillan in his playoff debut had 5 receptions for 81 yards. Not too shabby there either. I mean, hey, again, I want to condense it, but that game was worth it. You know, with how competitive that got. And then you look at this game on Saturday as well between the Packers and the Bears, and oh my gosh, dude. I mean, oh gosh. Where do I even start with this, man? Where do I even start with this? Oh boy. Okay. Goodness gracious. Alright, so, man, I just gotta rattle off some things real quick. Because I'm going somewhere with this. Alright, so at multiple points throughout the game, they mentioned that the Bears previously had a 5-point deficit in the 1933 NFL Championship game, which would be their largest fourth quarter comeback in a playoff game in Bears franchise history up to the time of this play on Saturday night. You also had them in a situation where they could have became the fourth to win a game after trailing by 15 or more points in the fourth quarter, and they were also in a position that if things went a certain way, they could pull off their largest ever comeback win against Green Bay. And this is the Bears we're talking about. No one had that in the cards with the way that this game started. This was all Packers, all first half long. And they didn't even need to implement their own kind of running game to initiate ball control. They just made the Bears look anemic as fuck. I mean, the Bears had a solid drop to start out the game, but as Michaels and Herbstreit repeatedly said to start it out, it was going to come down to how teams performed in the red zone. And the Bears did not help themselves. You know, you want to get on the board first, but having a field goal in that situation where you take up damn near 8 minutes off the clock in the first quarter is not going to help you out much. Especially with the way that the Packers were just moving up and down the field all over them. You got Jaden Reed, the gadget man himself, going early before you would have Romeo Dobbs get over the middle of the field against Jalen Johnson's coverage for a 33-yard gain. And ultimately, they got into the red zone. While I would have wanted them to rely on Josh Jacobs more, they got Christian Watson in the end zone for a 7-yard touchdown catch. No problem. There are also just some inexplainable things from the Bears all around here. Like, I genuinely don't know what some of these passes ended up being for Caleb Williams. I think both quarterbacks, in a sense, throughout this game, were just trying their absolute hardest to pull off some of the drunkest football plays imaginable. I don't know. Like, they got good progress here, and they picked up an earlier fourth down with getting DJ Moore fed. But then you had a situation where I guess there was a miscommunication between Caleb Williams and Luther Burden III. I suppose he was expecting him to run a post on the play. But either way, you have Luther Burden III on the sideline, wide open. Like, there are situations where in real time you can adjust even if you are expecting one thing. Like, I know he's not going to be able to eye it fully because you are focusing on a completely different area of the field. But this interception that he threw straight to Carrington Valentine just looked so ugly from an optimal standpoint. And it was just, it continued for them. But the Packers didn't give a damn. Because, again, Jordan Love was dealing, especially in the first half. You even had it going so well that Matthew Golden was being fed. And that would ramp up over the course of the game. It was mentioned by a graphic that Matthew Golden and Kadarius Toney are the only two rookie wide receivers drafted in the first round in NFL history to not record a touchdown catch in a regular season game. Eventually that would change, but we'll get there because it would mainly be Jaden Reed first. Yes, Tremaine Edmonds is an athletic linebacker. He can play all over the field. That is understood. However, Jaden Reed hit his ass with the nastiest spin move into a double move you'll see from typical wide receivers here. And it got Edmonds so far out of position that this throw to him for a touchdown from 18 yards out was just made exponentially easier on Jordan Love. And they took a 14-3 lead at that point. They were rolling. It continued. Because for whatever reason, and this would be something too, we look at how the Rams' decision to be aggressive on fourth down in that situation nearly cost them the game and shifted it completely. Well, why is it that you would have the Bears, even though they did pick up an earlier fourth down, and you have Ben Johnson coming in from the Dan Campbell tree, but there was no reason to attempt to go for a fourth down on this drive. And it instantly got batted down by one of the Packers' D tackles. Instantly. That led them to yet another touchdown drive, this time from short range, and you had Dobbs score a 1-yard touchdown on fourth down after just completely losing the assignment that Nahshon Wright had on him to go up 21-3 at that point. Yet again, the Bears got the ball back under the 2-minute warning now, with a chance to at least get themselves on the board. However, they stalled out after Colston Loveland would haul in a 22-yard catch and proceeded to not really do much after that. Man, the Packers, man, look, you were up 21-3, and they had a chance as well with a shorter field to get yet another score in this game. You can't put it all on a single player in these scenarios when you look at blowouts like that, because this one, especially from Green Bay's case, would feel like nothing short of a slow-ass burn throughout the rest of the game. And this shit from McManus did not help. Now, yes, it was windy as fuck in Chicago. It's the Windy City for a reason. But you can't miss that field goal. You can't do it. And at that point, as this game gets closer and closer and closer, although you can't take those moments away, you can't get them back, but you're leaving those points on the board. And what the hell do you think that's going to do for your team in that situation? Not much at all. It's crazy, too, because, yes, you can look at this and say that, okay, Jordan Love became the second Packer along with Dickey in 1982 to post 3 passing touchdowns or more in the first half of a playoff game. That's great. That's tremendous. Don't get me wrong. And yes, Josh Jacobs even had 12 rushes for 49 yards in that first half. But man, they sputtered completely in the third quarter. Primarily because of that lack of ability to get anything, and I mean anything, going on the ground at all. Like, it's just so unexplainable to me. Yes, Emmanuel Wilson had the good game against the Bears in the last time out that they faced off against each other. But in these last few matchups that the Packers and the Bears had, you know that he is a dominant force on the ground. You know that he can be the X factor in a game like this. And we're not even consistently feeding him the ball like that. Even when we do, the Bears defense of all defenses, is getting them behind schedule consistently. And it's forcing the Packers at this point to go through 3 and out after 3 and out after 3 and out after 3 and out. They have 4 straight punts in this game. Quick drops. And the Packers, ironically enough, defensively, were still doing their best to hold. They had a few chunk plays as Colston Loveland has truly emerged as a quality fit for them. And yes, I can still complain and say that Tyler Warren was probably the better talent, and you probably want to draft the better talent in that scenario. But with Loveland's performance in this game, he would eventually become the first rookie tight end with 100-plus receiving yards in a postseason game since Keith Jackson in 1988. So it's safe to say that the way they have gone about utilizing him in their offense made their draft choice even easier. And I guess they envisioned that when they scouted him, when they had the interviews with him in the pre-draft process. But it is truly coming to form for him now. And that helped slightly. Only at this point, the Bears mustered a field goal out of that drive. The Bears had yet another long drive after another Packers punt, and they still could not get in the end zone because of just another, stupid throw. If I'm in this situation, I would have wanted them to run the football, but they decided to call a fake, I guess, and you had Caleb Williams just throw it right into the hands of Hopper. I didn't truly understand that at all. It was so strange. And yet again, you get the stop there, yet you're backed up so far, and then you just have some weird shit happen. Like, this play was just, again, another one where somebody's incredibly high. How the hell did you come up with the decision to pass it to a backup lineman on a screen route? And yeah, he gets a nice little truck. That kind of silences the crowd a little bit. But then the nigga fumbles the football. Okay, it gets kicked forward, and you have multiple Bears pursuing it. Every one of them, especially when you look at Brisker, and I think it was also, let me see. Because I'm like, it's just, how the fuck does some shit like that happen? Like, there is, it was just too crazy of a play. I think Brisker and Byard III were in the area, along with a few other linebackers trying to get their hands on the football, and it just slipped straight out of bounds. Like, what the fuck? Yeah, Dexter Sr., Brisker, bro, there's somebody's got to get the fucking ball. Long story short. But they would still get the stop they were looking for because Jordan Love decided, hey, okay, I'm going to intentionally ground a pass and set us all the way back. Devin Duvernay would also get a few solid returns, including this one to start out a drive that bled early into the fourth quarter. And yet again, it was looking somewhat promising for the Bears. They had another drive going until Lucas Van Ness got right around the rookie tackle in Trapillo, who would eventually go out with an injury himself, but was being battle-tested on pretty much every single rep. As a result of just, I'm again, the scheme that Halfley was running. Like, yeah, you want Micah Parsons in that situation back, but to constantly attack the rookie, a potential weak link on a line that's been much improved across the entire season for them with some free agency help and Thuney and Jackson, along with, I guess a bit of an emergence from Darnell Wright. Like, they've gotten it going. It's just that you're still going to have some potential rough spots on that roster, and that can't be controlled in that situation. You have to play with the personnel you are given in that situation. Cairo Santos, at the very least, would get a 51-yard field goal, and I mean, hell, even with all this going down, it was still a 2-possession ball game. Something had to give at some point. Man. Yet the Packers would once again get in yet another situation where the pressure ramped up. Montez Sweat got after Jordan Love, and he forced intentional grounding yet again, forcing them into another punt. Then shit started to get absolutely crazy. They would finally capitalize on a drive in the red zone for the very first time in this game and notch their first touchdown on the night, with DeAndre Swift essentially taking the split play right up the middle for a 6-yard touchdown run. Then the Packers would kind of give themselves some life, although they damn near took it away from themselves. Because for a man in Josh Jacobs that had never in his NFL career returned a kickoff before, they decided to put him back there, and instantly, you have Hicks, one of the special teamers for the Bears, force a fumble on him. Luckily, they recovered it, and luckily, with the help of Matthew Golden, taking a screen route all the way to the fucking house, weaving his way around the defense, juking out people, hurdling Kyler Gordon as well, and just completely swerving his way into the end zone for the very first time in his NFL career. What a time for him to get it done, to give the Packers the brief lead in a playoff game, mind you. However, McManus struck yet again at the worst possible time. Again, wins are high there. Understandable. What the fuck are you doing missing a PAT like this? It changes the thing completely. They're down by this point by 11, and the Bears are in a spot where they're going to have to at least go for 2 on one occasion. You make it to where they, even in doing that, have to, on a potential next possession, drive all the way for a touchdown instead. And again, with how close this ended up giving, it's a lot of points just being left on the board here. The Packers would take full advantage of it. Although, man, it came with them staring down a barrel. Yet, this is where the Bears want to be. This is exactly where they want to be at this point. Like, after a while, man, you have 6 different comebacks in a single season. In the final 2 minutes of a game, you had a situation where they put up that flurry of points in the fourth quarter against the Packers the first damn time, and overtime, mind you, to come out with the win eventually. I guess they just live for these kinds of moments. So when you see Caleb Williams back all the way up and then get out on the run as McDuffie's trying to pressure him, he damn near gets sacked on this play and just unloads a fucking dot down the sideline to Roma Dunze, who was back in this game from injury, for a 27-yard gain to save the drive and maybe even the season for them. Like, people were going to look back at that play, take everything else into account that happened afterwards, and consider, oh, okay, that might have been the turning point in this game for them, at least offensively. Ultimately, you had Monangai get out of the backfield on a deeper 3rd and long, pick up a 22-yard gain from them from there, and then have Zacchaeus work over the middle for an 8-yard touchdown catch. All of a sudden, with a 2-point conversion, this was a 3-point ball game. And the Packers, they had a chance to close it out if they just ran the damn football effectively enough. Like, yes, the passing game was working, and yes, they were still able to hit Romeo Doubs and Matthew Golden on multiple occasions. But at that point, you get into Chicago territory, you force them to use 2 of their timeouts, and you have second down. Like, yes, Josh Jacobs got stuffed the first damn time, but the risk between, keeping the ball on the ground with him and putting the ball through the air would prove to be far better. Because at that point, you have Jordan Love constantly getting these drop back scenarios, and ultimately, they got themselves in a situation where they come out of a timeout getting a delay of game. That set them back, and once they got this incomplete pass, you had Jordan Love say, okay, I'm trying to game this motherfucker. I'm trying to send this Romeo Doubs' way right now, over the top, in the end zone, no questions asked. They play lockdown coverage on it, and that fails. You have McManus go out for this again, and he misses the field goal again. Brutal for him. Brutal for the old man. And again, we can have that conversation. Although, again, in that kind of weather, getting backed up like that from what could be a sure thing under 40 yards, it is an unwinnable situation for anybody involved. No matter how you sliced it, the Bears, around 2 minutes left in this game, they had a fucking shot. And by goodness, they took it. They took it. Working on a single timeout, knowing they had the 2-minute warning in their back pocket as well, man, they just started driving down the field with a purpose, man. And as you had DeAndre Swift work his way into a couple of big gains for them on this drive, it would be DJ Moore on a fake screen wheel route. They faked it perfectly. And you had enough people bite on the route for DJ Moore to get over the top and into the end zone for a 25-yard score to give the Bears the 31-27 lead at the time. Now at this point, craziness, man. The Packers were up at halftime by a score of 21-3. They had a 24-9 lead at the start of the fourth quarter, essentially, and you give both of those up. Now being the team on the defensive, having to work your way back into this game and get a touchdown to win the game. Also understanding that if you complete and convert all those field goal opportunities, those are 7 points left on the board that probably gives you a little bit of an advantage in the situation. But nonetheless, everything played out as it needed to for us to reach this particular moment in time, where you did have Matthew Golden and Romeo Doubs convert a couple key third downs on this drive. But man, there was not enough urgency. In a way. Like, Jaden Reed did get a great gain over the middle of the field to the 23-yard line. But then you had them just burn all this time off the clock, and it resulted in an incomplete pass. They just mismanaged this so horribly. You have them step back again for another throw, and a false start penalty ensues. That just only hurts them even more. Ultimately, you have multiple incomplete passes with Jordan Love on this third down, with what essentially be the final play of this game, just having an awkward snap, again, from a player, and honestly, actually no, they had to put in a different center, I believe, because I think Sean Ryan was taken out of this game. Not, again, all things just completely working against you in that moment. And you had Jordan Love bobble the ball around a little bit. He was trying to direct traffic, trying to get something to go. At that point, that's the final play. Ultimately, he would let the pass go, and it fell right in Kyler Gordon's vicinity with him simply just batting it down and getting the Bears the 31-27 win. So I mentioned all those different historical stat lines that they posed throughout the game. And the Bears would add to that tally. It became their largest ever comeback win against Green Bay. They became the fourth team to win after trailing by 15 or more in the fourth quarter, I suppose, in a playoff game. They notched their largest fourth quarter comeback in a playoff game in their franchise history. And also, with a different stat line here, they would... Let me see. Where is it at? The Bears would win their first postseason game when trailing by 8 or more points. They hadn't done it in 37 prior tries, but hey, after halftime, with what would end up being a 25-point fourth quarter, they got it done. And again, the Packers, you look at that, some of the games that they've had this season, some of the losses that they had to put themselves in this scenario, even with the loss of Micah Parsons, come down to that kind of thing. Like, you have them playing exceptionally well defensively, and still, somehow, someway, you're letting a team linger in for long enough because of inept offensive play to where all of a sudden you look back up at the scoreboard and you're down with zeros on the clock. It does not, you can't have that in playoff time. Like, everything was in the bag for them, and they just let it go. 2 different touchdown drives of 85 plus yards for them. That was the first time they did that since, Super Bowl 32 in a playoff game. And you still pissed that away. To get into some of the numbers, Caleb Williams had 361 passing yards along with 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions and 50% completion, along with 20 rushing yards on the ground. Again, same thing with Caleb Williams in a way. Like, he's had some ugly performances. The first 3 quarters of this thing were absolutely tough, and you could see it. He was getting frustrated at Luther Burden III on that aforementioned interception. He was livid and pissed the fuck off. And you know what? Even with all that being said, he played like it. He played like a man possessed in that fourth quarter. Carried, that momentum of having other guys like Colston Loveland and DJ Moore pick him up over the course of the entire time. And he parlayed that into a fucking win. Speaking of Colston Loveland, man, 8 receptions for 137 yards. Fuck Michigan, but that's a great debut game for a tight end. Again, one of the best since I mentioned that particular stat line. It's honestly crazy to see. And again, the case remains, in some crucial situations, they were still looking his way. The Packers were trying to zone in on him, and yet for like 3 different plays in a row, they just went Colston Loveland throw, Colston Loveland throw, Colston Loveland throw, and by goodness, he always came up with the ball. It was crazy. DJ Moore had 6 receptions for 64 yards and a touchdown, and Norma Dinze had 2 receptions for 44 yards in his return, while Luther Burden III had 3 receptions for 42 yards. For the Packers, Jordan Love, 323 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and 52.2% completion for him. He still could have had a much better game overall, and I think that's what the entire team is going to tell themselves. They did not do enough. Even if you look at that and you say, oh, okay, you didn't turn the ball over in this scenario. Man, when it came time for you to potentially put this game on ice, you came as far away from that as possible. And it's just unacceptable. It truly is, man. 55 rushing yards, rather, for Josh Jacobs on 19 carries and 2.9 a pop. Like, when is that ever okay? When is that ever okay? Especially in this system. You've got a huge lead here. And you're divisional rivals with this team if you're thinking from Matt LaFleur's perspective. I don't give a fuck about anything he has to say with, potentially having beef with Ben Johnson or whatever. Man, you understand what the Bears have done all season long, and they just did it to you a few weeks ago to essentially secure the damn NFC North. So how is it that on the biggest stage all year, in one of the biggest games you've had all year, knowing that you just went out like this in a similar fashion to this same team in Soldier Field again a few weeks back, why would you manage the game in such a poor way now? Like the Bears, they were able to work themselves back into it. It did not have to be that way. Hell of a game from Ben Johnson in rallying this team back. It did not have to be that way. If you properly managed the football game from the head coach perspective, and you just did not. Romeo Dobbs had 8 receptions for 124 yards along with a touchdown. Matthew Golden even had 4 receptions for 84 yards, and as I mentioned, his first touchdown catch in the league. Jaden Reed had 4 receptions for 43 yards and a touchdown, and Christian Watson had 3 receptions for 36 yards and a score. Yeah, and I guess a quick note as well. Again, this is just such an epic collapse, man, in all the wrong ways. Yes, you're gonna look at McManus and kind of say this. In reality, though, with a general understanding of things, one may recognize that this is nothing new for the Packers, man. This has been the case for them essentially since Mason Crosby became a lot of an older figure, I should say, with this roster. When Mason Crosby was a kicker in his prime, you knew it was going to be automatic more often than not for the Green Bay squad in a single possession ball game. He was always money at that point in time. But of course, with age, we've seen kickers be able to tail off at multiple points, even the greats. I'm pretty sure Vinatieri had a few down years as a kicker. Gostowski had a few down years as a kicker. Janikowski had a few down years as a kicker before retiring. And it caught Mason Crosby as well. Father Tom has been undefeated in that scenario, and his accuracy became such a liability for this team, lack thereof, I should say, that they had to let him go. And since that point of time, they've never been able to find a quality replacement at that position. They tried it with Anders Carlson, and LaFleur hated his fucking guts. They thought that Narveson, with a few solid games in place of Carlson, Braden Narveson might be the guy to step up and get it done for them. He obviously did not pan out, and they tried it out with an established veteran in McManus after also giving, I guess, on a few occasions this season, an injury, Lucas Havershek, that is, reps at the kicker position. So the struggles were always there for them. It's a poor time to have it. And again, that speaks to just general, I guess, kind of personnel decisions in this organization right now. Because, man, as a whole, between, some of the contracts that they have now with some of the guys that they may have to re-sign, they've got some intriguing decisions coming up. They are going to be commanding way more money to these people next season. And you get out of a season where you make that big of a move in the offseason. Finish of essentially like by default because everybody else was that bad, right? You don't even perform that well in your own division. You lose it, and you lose in the wild card. It's truly uneventful. There have been, different notes about LaFleur potentially going and everything like that. I'm not too sure about it. But I just know, again, from that scenario, man, you have to look his way as well. Players have to execute. But you also have to put those players in the best possible position to win. And yeah, with some of those misplays out there, you can potentially ask for those back. Those are just rough ones. Maybe they had great design and just didn't, result or end in the result that they wanted it to. But at the same time, man, even if you don't want to be that conservative, bro, you have got to incorporate more efficiency in the run game at that point. You have to understand your opponent through and through. You've seen them come back time and time again. You know that. And I even think at a point when they had, halftime interviews going on, they alluded to that. He himself admitted that, okay, this is something we're going to have to watch for. We essentially have to close this game, and you don't close the fucking game. What kind of sense does that make? Not much at all from that standpoint. But I digress. So it would get, even more intriguing on Sunday, as you would have the Jaguars take on the Bills at home, with them being the division winners of the AFC South in the first place. And, man, it was looking like the same old for Trevor Lawrence, at least a little bit in this first quarter. Because I genuinely don't understand where I was put into this game, right, when it started out. I don't understand what this interception was to save my life. I just don't. Shaq Thompson, yes, you can call this bait, but there's no reason for you at any point to think about throwing the ball in that direction, especially later on, as you're actively trying to move in a different direction. Any defender is going to capitalize on that mistake. And promptly, that's what ended up happening. Fortunately for them, as advertised, for most of this game, the Jags were able to get it done defensively. They held them to a field goal on this drive, and most importantly, throughout pretty much the rest of the game, from the onset, aside from a few runs here and there. And yes, I suppose they'd be kicking themselves over the end result in spite of this. Bro, Jimmy Cook the third, man. He's been doing it all year. He picked up the rushing title. He's making very good on the investment that they placed in him as one of the top running backs in the league in the offseason with the contract extension that he got. He has been penciled in at least for a 100-yard game pretty much every season, or every game this season, I should say. They completely swarmed that up. They did not give him too many lanes to run throughout the entire game. And you could say that alone is what kept Jacksonville alive for the longest period of time. It also helped that they themselves balancing it between Travis Etienne Jr. and also Byshul Tootin, the rookie, for 3 straight runs in a row, got all of, 10 plus yard gains or greater, and just bowling over people, trucked the dog shit on a Jordan Poyer, took it to the outside, got a great run there. He was bowling out. And that alone on this drive would allow them to get in the end zone for Brian Thomas Jr.'s first touchdown catch in his playoff career and a 3-yard score to give the Jags the 7-3 lead at the time. We understand that Josh Jacobs doesn't have the experience as a return man, so fumbles were going to be expected for him. However, Ray Davis, as a backup and return specialist, has had a lot of experience with this. LaQuint Allen Jr., a fellow running back and a rookie for the Jags at this point, he didn't give a damn. He decided, I'm going to pull off a textbook punch out with my helmet on this man, and I'm going to get the ball back from my team. Promptly, Devin Lloyd would recover the fumble and give the Jags a very, and I mean very, generous field to work with. Unfortunately for them, they could not capitalize on this possession at all, as Greg Rousseau is bound to make an impact at some point. He's just too dominant of a player. And ultimately, he would force Trevor Lawrence back before they would try to have Trevor Lawrence pick it up with his legs on both occasions. He got into manageable territory for the fourth down, but would end up being just short as his knee was down prior to Shaq Thompson getting at least a hand on him. And the ball was short of the line to gain at that point. Tough break for the Jags. And even tougher when you consider that the Bills would follow that up with a 10-play, 92-yard drive of their own. While it hasn't always been the case for the Bills this season, I'm not gonna lie, they had a little bit of success with some deep shots in this game. And that's what the Bills have needed. They are always trying to run the football. They still, have the highest disparity of run-pass play splits in the NFL at that point. They've definitely favored it, and for good reason if they're going to be that efficient across the entire year. Yet, some of those things opened up even without them really being able to establish the run game at all. It was a surprise for me to see Keon Coleman break so wide open. Like, that is the shit right there that they've been waiting on for so long. However, that gain down the field would come with a little bit of a cost, as you would have Josh Allen also hit his finger immediately and directly on somebody else's helmet. He was holding that shit for dear life and excruciating pain. We get even worse for him on what would be a great run up the middle for him on third down in a goal-to-go situation to get the score, because as they're trying to, play through the whistle even, they tackle him back and his leg almost buckles. So he was just down on the ground, just warranting some kind of help at that point. And at least he was able to get back up and enter this game again. But the Jags, man, they were not trying to let him leave this game unscathed. They were making sure he was going down consistently and with as much pain as possible. Sometimes that's what it takes, I suppose. And unfortunately for the Jaguars, they had a decent drive going, but man, Brenton Strange was a core guy for them. They got a chance at times to get him some looks, but they were almost always thwarted by another player. It would be Deion Walker on the back down here. And, Strange was wide open on this play. So if you avoid that, who knows how many yards he's getting on this. Ultimately, they would be stopped on this drive, and while the Bills would get the ball back, they themselves would try to take out a good amount of time, leaving the Jags with little to do anything at all, but they still ended up punting the ball regardless. And hey, with the Jags being backed up, it was interesting. They didn't have a single timeout to work with as well, so they needed a lot of huge plays on this to ensure that they could come away with a field goal here. As impressive as you want this Trevor Lawrence scramble to be, he definitely had good escapability on this. However, man, it took too much time off. They burned 31 seconds on that alone. And not to, add insult to injury here, they also had a false start penalty take place. However, even with that being said, it would be a Parker Washington 34-yard catch over the middle with him working on the Ohio State man Jordan Hancock to get them down the field. But at that point, they had less than 10 seconds left, and they needed to hustle to the fucking line to get a snap off. Now, upon replay, it looked like they didn't, and the half was just going to be over and out. However, they caught Joey Bosa offsides, as the center was, from their logic, trying to snap the ball. So they gave the Jags an additional second to pull off an additional play, which would be a field goal. And Cam Little would surprisingly miss from 54 yards out. We've seen this man bang home so many field goals from longer distances this season that it felt like that was just going to be automatic. Instead, that would not prove to be the case for him, and they would ultimately fall short there, still trailing 10-7 at halftime. However, you would have both teams come out trading field goals, although the Jags would be able to do it in a much shorter period of time. And while the Bills would get the ball back after this, Josh Hines Allen would win yet another bout of who was the superior of the Josh Allens in the NFL. He'd get his ass far behind the line of scrimmage and force them into a deep 3rd and 20 gain before eventually having the Bills punt the ball here. The Jags, man, they were doing their thing. They were starting to settle in a little bit, especially on this drive. It would be Brian Thomas Jr. and Parker Washington just helping them get down the field with some timely catches. And ultimately, it would be Parker Washington with Christian Benford grabbing his shit, being all up in his jersey and everything, still getting the 6-yard touchdown catch on essentially an angle to give the Jags the brief lead. And it was looking scary for the Bills, man. Everybody trying to say, oh, we're definitely going to have stuff to say about Josh Allen if he loses this game and doesn't go on a deep Super Bowl run. If you lose to the Jaguars here, nobody else is there. Lamar Jackson's not in the playoffs. Patrick Mahomes II is not in the playoffs, man. You have everything out there in front of you. And granted, that might be the case. But damn, bro. Like, they were seriously trying to bang this man up. Still, he was able to overcome that at multiple points. And you would have him ultimately get Dalton Kincaid wide open for some reason on a 15-yard touchdown catch to give the Bills a 24-20 lead. A 20-17 lead, I should say. But the Jags had a response of their own up their sleeve. Although it would take a little bit of time, they managed to get Travis Etienne Jr. out of the backfield as well. He'd been dominating in the run game all day long. Little did they understand at that point that he does have the ability to be a receiving threat if he so chooses. And the Clemson connection will work out well for them as they would take the lead back in that scenario with around 4 minutes left in the game. If Josh Allen was going to overcome that and potentially avoid those narratives, he needed a drive here. And man, he would have one right in his arsenal. Like, this entire thing was just wild. Because, man, they get the first down to start it out, but then you have Josh Allen just off primarily flat feet, a very flat stance, just facing that area of the field in which he wants to throw it. Even really, in that situation, flipping his hip at all like they teach you. No, he just fires that shit right in a standing motion, man. Facing that center of the field. And it's a fucking spiral to Brandon Cooks getting open over the top for a 36-yard gain. As he's getting hit, mind you. So to be able to take all that on, like, that does show you just how great of a quarterback that Josh Allen has developed into. I don't know if he would be able to make those plays a few years back, but here we are. He is in his prime, reigning NFL MVP, making a huge play like that in that moment. And it would be on his shoulders again as they would work their way through that first down gain initially. We got down into a situation where the Jags got a couple of stops, quality stops on them, and then it came down to the ill-fated quarterback sneak. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. They powered right through the teeth of that defense. And the sneak worked so well that they not only got through the gap, but you had Osiris Torrance, one of the offensive linemen, along with several other people, and Josh Allen also keeping those feet churning. Man, he damn near scored a touchdown on this play himself. It picked up an 11-yard gain here. And while they would overturn it, they merely delayed the inevitable. All it took for the Bills was them doing the same exact thing and getting Josh Allen in the end zone for a rushing score. With that, the Jaguars, they were given one final chance at the very least to take this back, tie this game, take it to overtime, potentially win the game. Anything was on the cards for them, even without them having a timeout. And the one thing that could not happen ended up happening. Now, again, it's brutal because, you could understand where Trevor Lawrence was trying to throw it in this situation, but, man, you had Tre'Davious White draped all over Jacoby Myers. And his deflection allowed Cole Bishop to go after the ball, get it back for them, and end the game for the Bills, giving them a 27-24 victory against this team. With that going down, they had a number of milestones going for themselves. But to get into the numbers, Josh Allen had 273 passing yards along with a touchdown pass on 80% completion and 2 touchdown runs as well. He would, with his play in this game, just continue solid dominance in the playoffs, along with securing what was their first win on the road in a playoff game since the 1992 AFC Championship game. He also has he's also the only player in NFL history with 250-plus passing and 50-plus rushing yards per game in the playoffs. Also averages the most total yards in the game in a postseason. Or averages the most total yards per game in the postseason in NFL history as well. Now through 9 at this point of time. James Cook III, again, the Jags limited this man completely. 15 rushes for 46 yards is nothing, quite frankly. And they made, they essentially quieted him. Allow him to dictate any part of this game. And that was perfect for them. But they decided, okay, with that point, we're going to make Josh Allen beat us. And that's exactly what ended up happening from their perspective. So I guess you kind of got what you asked for. Khalil Shakir had 12 receptions for 82 yards. Very disproportionate, but a lot of those are situations where he is primarily being looked to make those quality plays is essentially the most consistent wide receiver on the team they have right now. And yeah, that's saying something. But man, more often than not, he was reliable. Caught all 12 of his targets too. And that does go a long way in the situation. Brandon Cooks had 3 receptions for 58 yards. As for the Jags, though, Trevor Lawrence had 207 passing yards along with 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions on 60% completion. Oh. It's a tough way to go up. It's a tough way to go out. I mean, even with him playing in that way, regardless of how good or not you think it is, man, they still had a lead. They still did everything in their power to put themselves in prime position to win the entire thing. And again, between a few defensive lapses and the utter willpower of this Bills team in a way, they were not able to do much of anything with that, unfortunately. The team as a whole, the Jags, combined for 154 yards on 6.7 yards per carry, yet ran the ball just 23 times. And I guess some people were complaining as well, oh, hey, maybe we should have ran the ball a little bit more. But again, coulda, woulda, shoulda. Like, I don't know. That's very efficient to me. And they still, again, at that point, had the lead towards the tail end of the game. Like, you can't look at that, reflecting on the game and then just come up with the conclusion that, okay, we should have ran the ball more to not give Josh Allen any time at all to do anything with it on his own end. It's not a perfect world that you can scheme up in that situation. That is not a scenario that you can just craft up and have come to life. Like that, there are real life components of those things that will alter with that entire dynamic, and that's what ended up happening here. Parker Washington had 7 receptions for 107 yards along with a touchdown in this game, despite playing with a concussion. Travis Etienne Jr. had 5 receptions for 49 yards in the score, and Brian Thomas Jr. had 2 receptions for 21 yards and a score as well. Oh yes, I am also aware of the, it's just so dumb. You had a reporter, I'm assuming that it's a Jags reporter, honestly do something pretty nice that you rarely see from reporters in this day and age, in commending Liam Cohen on a great season. And in all honesty, it was a great season. First year as a head coach, completely turning around a fellow Florida team and having them compete for an opportunity to win the Super Bowl. Like, that is huge for a Jags team that had been in the dumps over the past few years. With them asking all these questions about the legitimacy of Trevor Lawrence over the entire time, the construction of the whole team, and them literally, being in a position earlier in the year last year to draft essentially in the top 2. Now they're out here automatically being playoff contenders. Like, that is a truly tremendous season that should be respected. Yet for some reason, those comments, brief in nature, became a bit of controversy over, honestly, just some hating ass people. I'm just gonna say that. Like, bruh, like, how is that? And I mean, I'll get much further to it, especially considering because, oh man, especially when you look at the Steelers reporter, Brooke Pryor, that tweeted something out about this. With her talking about, oh, okay, we have a job as reporters to, ask questions and do all those kinds of things. And it needs to be in a brief amount of time. The comments were limited in the first place. And again, we don't even take into consideration that Liam Cohen appreciated those comments. We just take into account, oh, you aren't supposed to do that. That's not part of the job. Nigga, have some compassion. What the hell? When has there ever been a problem with that? I'm not too sure. Like, I'll get much further into it there because, again, while she ain't the only one, I find it ironic that she would come out and tweet that in response to the situation, and then she herself, as a Steelers reporter, oh man, I can't wait to talk about that. Oh my goodness. But in general, I'll say it's like, dude, like the media, all the time, y'all will have situations where we're out here literally putting things out of context, clipping different things in just placing or slapping your own kind of, I guess, purported narrative on the matter to try to get out your side of things. Like that's generally what's going on here. Or you'll have scenarios where, again, when other people get themselves in spots where they're doing stuff that they're not supposed to be doing, supposedly, it has been called out. And these things are much more damning by comparison. Remember the shit the fucking Indiana reporter was doing with Caitlin Clark. And they still have this man on the job, if I'm not mistaken. Which is just crazy to think about. You have other situations where you have, and again, reporters, like, they're not completely, I guess, wrong to think this. They go through a lot too. They will be in situations where, if you're talking to a player with, kind of high tension, you're going to catch a lot of smoke. It is a part of the job. But damn, when you have an opportunity to sit down and just offer some compassion and a mutual understanding as general people, not just reporter, athlete, etc. I mean, I don't see the problem with that at all. I don't know how that's a controversy. And honestly, the fact that that is the case, that formed into the case amongst a few just general, again, hating ass niggas. Like, man, I would love to see how y'all go about things in y'all own personal lives, where you'd want compassion to be offered your way, but, it's not a part of the job description, so I'm not going to do it. There are cases where, yes, you have to separate yourself and your emotions and your biases and things like that from the job. Fair. Yes. But something so simple as just commending a man on a season where they performed well. They did. She ain't lying to the man. She ain't taking 3 or 4 minutes to get her point across. It only took like about 30 seconds. It was quick as hell. And again, it made all the difference in Cohen's day at that point. So I don't understand. If he isn't the one having a problem with this at all, if he's embracing it, how is it that other people outside of the fucking club are hating on the fucking thing? Like, just no, come on, bro. Come on, y'all gotta stop, man. That doesn't make any sense, dude. But I digress. We'll get to that in time. But let me first move into this next game between the 49ers and the Eagles. Oh my gosh. It started off hot, and then it you knew it was crazy when you had Demarcus Robinson, of all people, break out of a post route and get over the middle against Quinyon Mitchell, of all people, for a 61-yard gain, which would go down as the 49ers' longest play of the season to that point. Like, that was crazy. In the entire first drive, along with a few of the early ones, they actually had success targeting Quinyon Mitchell a lot. A lot. Rarely do you do it because he is truly a shutdown corner, but every single time they threw the ball his way on this drive, it resulted in completion. Because you also had Christian McCaffrey get over top of him. He mossed his ass for an 11-yard gain. Got up like a wide receiver typically would, and he'll hauled this in before you also had them fake a pitch in a sweep route out of the backfield. They got Demarcus Robinson working on Mitchell again. They forced linebackers down at that point, and it gave Demarcus Robinson all the room he needed over the middle to make that sharp cut into the end zone, deeper in that range, and get himself in for a 2-yard score. That was crazy. The Eagles themselves looked as though they had gotten it going. They got an early explosive run from Saquon Barkley, and yes, those have been rare this season. But to start off a drive like that, to start off the playoff run like that, that definitely had to get them inspired a little bit. And ultimately, they'd be able to work that down with Dallas Goedert getting in the end zone on a rushing touchdown himself. However, wind and Jake Elliott's inconsistency over the past couple of years would just completely derail the Eagles here. Especially in this situation when it comes to him missing his PAT. Like, it's been the case with him over the past few years, between his lack of efficiency beyond 50 yards and then some of these just unexplainable misses. But at the same time, they mentioned that there were like 26 mile per hour winds at the start of the game, and that wind gusts would be as high as 36 miles per hour. That would also kind of, I guess, align with the way that the rest of this game went for a while. Because I ain't gonna lie, you even had Tom Brady coming out here at a point later in the game trying to explain how you throw in and against the wind in that situation. It's hard to stretch the ball down the field knowing that that shit is going to carry it in a completely different direction. And so a lot of the passes for both teams, like, rarely did you see them try to attempt so many deep shots for a while. It just didn't make logical sense to do. And it kept them both at bay for a while. I mean, the Eagles have been in this constant cycle throughout the entire year. They keep saying that Patillo's offense is predictable, but at that point, all you can really do is run the football. And the 49ers, to their credit, even with them being completely banged up, they would limit that, to an extent. They'd limit the explosives for the rest of the game. And that made sure that, okay, the Eagles were not going to be able to get the upper hand here. The 49ers themselves have struggled all season. And even with Trent Williams being back, they still couldn't really establish a true running game. They were swarming all over Christian McCaffrey, except for a scenario later in the game where he was able to get away from Jalen Carter for a second and then implement a little bit of balance to work past some other guys on the team. But still, between them limiting the dual threat ability of Brock Purdy as well and getting enough pressure on him to make him crumble, they would also be forced into a rough stretch of drives here. At the very least, the Eagles were able to get down the field this time around. Although, granted, they had to overcome a false start penalty first. But, I mean, hey, you had Saquon Barkley break out in space for a huge gain. You had Tank Bigsby get a few solid runs in. And you would have Dallas Goedert essentially on fourth down, an RPO play. He would get in the end zone for a 9-yard touchdown catch. They initially overturned it because there was apparently an ineligible man downfield, and then they decided, we're going to pick up the flag and give you the touchdown anyways. So the Eagles would have themselves a 13-7 lead. And then disaster would strike for the 49ers, man. All season long, and I think this play shows it the best, honestly. All season long, man, they have been getting banged up by the war of attrition left and right and all over the motherfucking place. And it would not stop in this game. Because when you thought that it was bad enough already that they lost Fred Warner for the season, and again, he could still come back, I guess, in a specific scenario. They lost Nick Bosa for the season. They have a high percentage of their week 1 starters missing about like 74 games or something like that. By far one of the highest marks in the NFL. Now they would lose George Kittle on essentially a routine tackle. And no, it wasn't a dirty one from Marcus Epps, but as Epps was trying to bring him down to the ground, you see his knee buckle. And at that point, they knew that when you saw that pop, we all understood what that injury was. We've seen it too much in the NBA over the past year. So that was a telltale sign right there. He would be out, per multiple reports, per Adam Schefter, and, you would even have Kyle Shanahan make it known as well. He dealt with an Achilles tear right then, right there. Instantly out of the ballgame. Terribly unfortunate for one of their core players, and again, a guy who they'd mentioned has emerged into one of the better receiving threats in all-time 49ers history. And you lose him in an instant. Now you don't have, essentially, your greatest weapon out there. Demarcus Robinson and Kendrick Bourne, even Jawan Jennings, they're all solid wide receivers. But it would be a struggle for them to all create space. And even as they've mentioned that Ricky Pearsall can be a good deep threat for them, he was also out in this game. But you know what they say. It is about the strength in fucking numbers. And by goodness, the 49ers, they found a way to hang into what was a gritty-ass ball game. You instantly had Jawan Jennings find a way to get open in the slot against Cooper DeJean, of all people, for a 45-yard gain down the field that ultimately led to them getting a 36-yard field goal in from Eddie Pinheiro. Like, instantly. That is crazy to think about. And it shows just how much belief that Kyle Shanahan has put in all these guys as well. Like, when you have a team that can go through that many losses and still find a way to fight tooth and nail to compete over and over and over and over again, that's a testament to the mindset that has been implemented in that locker room. And Shanahan has deservedly gotten a lot of praise with that, because there's just, you can't get around that. Now, granted, they'd still have some of their own habits to break here. They would force the Eagles into a 3-and-out in a clutch way. But you would have just a weird scenario towards the tail end, because you get down, essentially, to your last time out. You use it because you're afraid of getting a delay of game penalty in that situation. Fine. However, you don't move that far down the field, and you aren't in field goal range at this point. Pinheiro has made a 60-yarder this season. It's just that, again, with the wind being that damn forceful, even with him being at the Eagles' 44-yard line, there ain't a great chance of him making that one. Yet they trying to get closer, and you have Brock Purdy. I don't know. He took too much time trying to dance around and make something happen. And he ultimately was caught fumbling the football out of bounds with time expiring for an opportunity there just completely whiffed on. Like, you have a chance to get on the board, tie the ball game, maybe put a little bit of pressure on the Eagles going into halftime. And I guess they were feeling it in a way, but still, they come out with absolutely nothing in that scenario. That is definitely tough to an extent. It was going to take something to break through for them, but it still would not be easy. You only saw a field goal take place in this quarter alone, and granted, that was due to having such a short field from the Eagles side of things. Overall, this third quarter was just man. The drops, man. A.J. Brown, bro, and Saquon Barkley, for that matter, would also, on one of these earlier drives, get a tough drop on third down. to force a 3-and-out. But A.J. Brown, man. Oh, man. All I gotta say is this, man. Because I'm not gonna harp too much on it, especially until we cover the entire flow of the game, right? But, bro, for you to constantly complain about not getting the ball and, constantly take shots at, Patulo in a way and everything like that, you are in a position in the playoffs to make a couple huge plays down the field for this Eagles team to spark some kind of offensive momentum. And you don't even come up with them because you're dropping passes left and right. That is just the most inexcusable thing to me. Like, I will say there was hand fighting, at least on this specific drop. There was hand fighting. It looked like A.J. Brown had to position himself back into the right spot to go out and dive for the football in the first place. Still hit him in the fucking hands. And you drop the shit like that. Like, that can't happen. You can't get away with that, bro. And ultimately, that forced yet another 3-and-out. While the 49ers would have to do the same thing again, and they also had a drive that resulted in Brock Purdy throwing an interception right in Quinyon Mitchell's direction. I don't know. The 49ers still had themselves a massive opportunity entering this fourth quarter. You could argue. But I guess Brock Purdy will learn a way that these are the reasons why you don't throw in Mitchell's direction. Fair enough. And so they decided, okay, we're going to start attacking this in different ways. We're going to get Kyle Juszczyk fed out of the backfield as a pseudo tight end if Kittle's going to be out. And he's always been a solid wide receiver. As a fullback in the NFL, nobody was expecting him to get the ball, and he got himself a 27-yard gain out of that on this drive before Jaywan Jennings, on a little bit of trickery, would take a double pass reverse to set up a massive deep shot down the field for Christian McCaffrey, who would break out essentially on a streak and get into the end zone, secure the catch for a beautiful 29-yard touchdown pass to give the 49ers the 17-16 lead. And at that point, it looked as though they had finally started to take over the game in terms of control of this thing. However, they would have to keep it going, and while they would get the stop, they got themselves in trouble. Not only did you have Scott Moore muff this catch, even if they got it back, but you also, in a matter of a few plays, had Purdy throw up another fucking ball in Quinyon Mitchell's direction. Dangerous mistake. He got his ass again. And that got the Eagles in prime field position to start driving themselves. But the 49ers, to their credit, with a number of other players stepping up on their front, Wallow made a number of great tackles in this game. Siegel, the rookie, was flying all over the place. You even had Jair Brown make an exceptional open field tackle like earlier in the game. And Eric Hendricks, of all people as well. Like, again, I don't know how he was picked up by this team, but he's here, and he was a huge presence for them in this game as well. Ultimately, they were able to force the Eagles into settling for a field goal. They still had a lead, but it didn't do the damage that they would have liked. You then have the 49ers going on a drive of glory for themselves, taking down the game all the way to essentially under 3 minutes as they just started to carve up this Eagles defense. And yes, they may have been a little tired out, because at that point, if your offense is going to be that inept to where you're constantly having to shift back out onto the football field in such a short period of time, it's going to be naturally easy for you to get gassed that way. However, it still didn't stop the 49ers from handling their business. And ultimately, with a little bit of improv, Brock Purdy would be able to hit McCaffrey for another 4-yard touchdown catch, and it would give them a 4-point lead, as Eddie Pinheiro would also have to deal with missing a PAT in that scenario. They still had to go down and get a touchdown no matter what, so I guess that would be very inconsequential. But oh man, this Eagles drive would piss even the most hardcore Eagles fan off, because you would have A.J. Brown fucking strike again. Like, it was literally to a point where they trusted everybody else in the passing game. Everybody else, except for the man that is commanding the most money out of that wide receiver core. Like, there was, again, no reason for A.J. Brown to drop this as it hits him right in the midst on what was a crucial third down. If not for Dallas Goedert and Devontae Smith continuing to make countless plays surrounding that Eagles drive probably would have been done a little earlier. Yet, they still were seemingly okay. They got in position at this point with 1st and 10 on the 20-yard line. And granted, all 3 games to this point, well, all 3 of the first 4 games to this point have been decided in the final 2 minutes of action. 3 of the first 4. Understanding that, if you're the Eagles, man, you had a prime opportunity to put this game away. And I think they themselves could have approached this much better. Because, yeah, you don't want to make it too obvious that you would want to lean on your run game in this scenario, and it plays back into the supposed predictability of this offense. But, bruh, I'd much rather you run the football in this scenario than take a sack, even if it was for a single yard. Because now you're losing time and you're backed up, ultimately forcing Hurts' hand to where he doesn't find anybody open. It would have been perfect for them to run the ball too. I mean, you understand, even if you are lined up in gun, they're playing everybody back. They're not trying to have anything get behind them. And if they're that spaced out, it gives Saquon Barkley all the room he needs to run to at least pick up a decent amount of yardage. Get them in closer territory to do what it is that they do best. And when you look at the Eagles over the course of the entire season, they've never been able to find that stretch of consistency for themselves. Even if they did manage to win the NFC East, even if they did manage to win 11 games, man, they have looked essentially like a shell of their former selves. And they had not been effective enough on the ground to where at the biggest moment, with honestly favorable positioning, all 3 of their timeouts at this point, they stray away from their core strength. And it promptly backfires. Because you have Devontae Smith, granted, tough drop on this third down. Then you have a play sending everybody deep on 4 verts on 4th down, and Eric Kendricks gets all over the pass. Now, again, you want to chalk that up to Patullo, fine. I was watching something yesterday, and they showed a clip of Jalen Hurts just being absolutely confused at what the fuck he heard coming from his mouth. Fair enough. Especially considering how Kendricks played this so well. Like, to the exact same spot they were trying to hit Goddard here, and I don't even think he had the leverage. You had triple coverage in that area. You had 2 people already guarding a man-to-man, and you had Eric Kendricks watching that zone with him getting the perfect deflection for the pass breakup. And ultimately, it gave the 49ers a 23-19 win. To get into the numbers here, Brock Purdy had 18 completions, along 262 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions on 58.1% completion from the field. Jalen Jennings also added the touchdown pass. Christian McCaffrey had 21 total touches for 114 total yards and 2 receiving touchdowns, becoming the 4th with at least 100 scrimmage yards and a touchdown in 5 straight playoff games in NFL history. Let me see. And Demarcus Robinson in this game also had 6 receptions for 111 yards and a touchdown. Kyle Juszczyk also added 4 receptions for 49 yards. Wallow and Kendricks both had more than 10 tackles in this game, with Kendricks also adding the TFL and the aforementioned pass deflection. As for the Eagles, Jalen Hurts had 168 yards and a touchdown on 57.1% completion, while Saquon Barkley had 106 yards on the ground on 4.1 yards per carry. And Devontae Smith also added 8 receptions for 70 yards, while Dallas Goedert had 4 receptions for 33 yards and a touchdown, Meanwhile, A.J. Brown and Saquon Barkley both had 3 receptions for 25 yards. Crazy to think about. Man, again, you have to give tremendous credit to the 49ers here for just sticking through this entire thing. And through all of the attrition, they advanced to the divisional round, with the NFC being completely decided as of the ending of that game, with them being set to face off against the number 1 seed Seattle Seahawks again for the second time in a few weeks now. We know what was on the line for them the first time, and that's what got the 49ers into this situation, but they give themselves a chance at redemption, and I think that is exactly where they want to be. As for the Eagles, man, just an absolute shit show. Man. You want to really put things into perspective. At a point in this game, they would pick up essentially their first 4th down conversion in 9 straight games. That is a real graphic that they displayed in the course of a game. And again, it all comes back to the idea of them losing their identity. Because a fair amount of these 4th down conversion opportunities, you would typically see them going for the tush push over and over and over and over again. Running the ball and punching it down the field until they felt as though somebody could stop them. And in some of those games, they were unstoppable. They could not be fucked with in terms of the rushing attack. However, this season has just seen a complete shift in that. They've lost all sense of identity there. And that's what ultimately ended up hurting them in this game. Ultimately. Because there's no way that you are so scared off of, potentially doing that you just abandon it completely. That is part of your identity. And you allow another team to strip that away from you. Just off of, how they are playing you alone. That's definitely tough to see. Stark turn of events for them. And then again, this damn A.J. Brown shit. They had a clip of him and Sirianni potentially getting into it, and now that could be something that they have to account for in the offseason as well. Just way too much going on there. It's terrible, man. Alright, moving on to the Patriots and Chargers. And to condense this one, just put this in perspective. This was the first postseason game since the divisional round game in 2020 between the Ravens and the Bills without a first half touchdown at all. And when you have both of these defenses playing that well, that was to be expected. But still, it was pretty ugly. And still, the Chargers had themselves a massive amount of opportunities as the Patriots did. But you were having the chance of the MVP for Drake May and everything before this game. The Chargers defense was getting after him the entire time, for the most part. All night long, he was enduring a lot of pressure to where he himself, in a way, was scrambling for his life. And they also got him in a sequence where they forced him to throw a tight window pass. It got tipped up by Derwin James Jr. and it fell into Deion Henley's hands. They had a possession at the 10-yard line in the first quarter. That was a prime opportunity for them to get on the board. And you want to know what the Chargers proceed to do here? Run. And then Keenan Allen is just completely overthrown by Justin Herbert in this situation. Cannot have a possession in like that in playoff football. It can't happen. By that point, neither team had scored anything. Again, both defenses were keeping each other on ice because on the Chargers side, for whatever reason, you had Jason Owe generating fucking sacks. I've never seen that shit in my life. And he was utilizing the speed advantage that he had on that side of the ball to create a bit of havoc on his side of the attack. Granted, Campbell as well, Will Campbell, the rookie left tackle, he hadn't played in a few games, but this is his first playoff action, and the Chargers also made it a note at points to attack his presence on that line. So that would constantly be exploited at times, and it paid off for him. Yet it still wasn't enough to keep the Patriots completely clamped up. Because Ramondre Stevenson, of all people in this game, would quickly become an overall X factor. Not only was he doing an exceptional job of running the ball, but on a play that I missed, you get them backed up all the way to the 2-yard line, and he proceeds to weave his way around the defense for a 48-yard gain out of the backfield. Who in their right mind, with his lack of speed, would have expected him to traverse that far down the field untouched? I wouldn't have imagined that was going to be the case, but I digress. The Patriots decided, okay, we're having a little bit of stagnation at this point, but we're making a good amount of progress here. We're driving, we're getting ourselves into their territory. So, you know what? We're going to pull on a little bit of trickery. We're going to do a Philly special, and we're going to give Drake May the football. Efton Chisholm III, he had Drake May wide open, and for whatever reason, I don't know what happened. He just completely missed him. Drake may not even end up catching the ball, fucking around, but he was there, so that was a tough miss. They were still able to get an easy out route to Kyle Williams and ultimately continue to drive down there, though not without some resistance from the overall coverage and also Tui Pelotu before Borregales would have to settle for a 23-yard field goal here. At least the Chargers themselves, they were able to respond, but oh man, I mean, goodness gracious, dude. They themselves had their own struggles, especially when it came to running the football. They said that Amarian Hampton was going to be questionable with an ankle injury as it was, and they tried to get him some reps in, but he was just not effective. They decided to hand the reins over to Kenani Vidal, and he would have some success, but would be limited by the combination of Gibbons and Spillane here, yet again, in the red zone, to have to settle for a field goal in this scenario. And nothing much would really change for either side. I mean, you had solid progress, and you had Drake May again with the relentless pressure of that unit have to step up at multiple points and essentially become the leading rusher of the team. Yet still, they were forced to punt anyways. In the Chargers themselves, that was egregious on their end, it was much worse there. Because that Patriots defense, obviously, we know how they've taken a stride this season. We know what they did in the offseason to reach this point, and they put it all on display. They had Milton Williams and Kyle Chase on back-to-back plays, just completely fucked this nigga up in the backfield. And yes, Herbert was going through it this season. I mean, damn, bro. The amount of times he just got taken straight to the ground, and it took him a number of seconds to get back up. That's how much he was taking a punishment, I should say, in this game. Physically. And with that offensive line, dude, man. It just can't happen. It can't happen. It was to be expected with the injuries that you've had, but man, at least try at a point. That's where it really comes down to. Hey, the Patriots were able to get some life in what was a tie ball game, as you would have Drake May take advantage of essentially prevent defense at that point and get himself a 37-yard scramble up the middle, hauling ass, before eventually settling for another 35-yard field goal from Borregales and giving them the 6-3 lead at halftime. Man, you had these teams just getting completely limited. Both of them in the third quarter. Both of them. Even with the Patriots being able to have essentially what was one of the longest drives in the quarter. And they, I guess overall in the quarter, they were able to get down the field, but they were always met with some form of resistance. You had good plays to start out here, including more from Ramondre Stevenson. But then you had Drake May get his clock sped up completely. And that pocket presence, that started to crumble tremendously. He's trying to figure out a way to get out of it. And all of a sudden, you have him just anticipate in a way that Owe is coming from that side of the field. And he just loses the ball at that moment. Deshaun Hand recovers it and gives the Chargers the ball back. Yet the Chargers themselves, even with having situations where you have Christian Gonzalez clamp up Quentin Johnston, you look for a pass interference and don't get it. You have Carlton Davis III blatantly grabbing the nigga on a pass interference and you get that. And then you proceed to do very little on the next 3 downs. Inexcusable drop to have. It also hurt as well because even with you being able to keep the Patriots limited, you still allowed them to get a number of explosive plays in this game. Like, I think they had a massive disparity in terms of plays of 10 plus yards or greater in this game. And you would have them get back-to-back pickups of 19 on 3rd down to Hunter Henry, the possession tight end himself, before having Kayshon Boutte on essentially a broken coverage. You catch a cornerback completely slipping, and he adjusts back to the ball, gets down the field for a 42-yard gain while being a possession wide receiver in his own right. Those little things would prove to be all the difference in a game that was this damn close. And while they would be able to hold up yet again, one could ask for how much longer, even as they were down 9-3 in the situation after another Andres Borregales field goal. Because you get yourself the ball back and then have another quick possession, as Marcus Jones damn near produced what would be one of the better plays for them on the night. I mean, he got this sack fumble on Justin Herbert, and it bounced perfectly right back into the hands of Kimani Vidal for him to get a 13-yard run on this game. And while they would still be able to pick up another first down after that, when they were forced to play traditional offense, they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. Never would I have thought that I would see Keenan Allen drops in the big 2026, but here we are. Regardless of whether or not he caught this pass on 3rd down, though, it was going to come back because there was an illegal shift penalty. Just more self-inflicted wounds costing them another opportunity to still take a lead. It's a 6-point ball game. Like, you're right in it, and you can't do anything at all. It's mind-blowing to me. With that, the Patriots would put together essentially their most productive drive of the night and the only touchdown drive of the night, as May would zip a pass to Kayshon Boutte before getting out on the loose, scrambling like he has consistently done as the quarterback with the most attempts and first down conversions on scrambles in the NFL in the regular season. We saw how impactful that was in this game, and it would continue there with them ultimately setting up a fake and having Hunter Henry get just over the outstretched arms of Derwin James Jr. for a touchdown catch from 28 yards out to give them a 16-3 lead at essentially the early point of the 4th quarter. It was go Tom or nothing for the Chargers at this point. They had to initiate something or the game was over. And although Justin Herbert would break out of trouble, when they were able to surround him, oh man, it was torture. Like, this put it all into perspective for me, man. This image is going to be a lasting one of their season. You had him get crunched in between Kayvon Chaisson and a number of other Patriots defensive linemen, as he would also lose the ball with Christian Ellis getting it back. Man, they struggled to get this nigga up off the ground. That's how terrible and how powerful of a pursuit that was. And yet still, they had life somehow. Because they would do the same thing defensively with Jason Owe, again, creeping off the edge, getting on Drake May's ass. Luckily for them, the center fell back on it. And thus, the Patriots had to punt the ball away. Yet, by that point, the Chargers, I don't know, the Patriots had lost Christian Gonzalez at that point. They had a different cornerback in, and they started to attack him, but they were keeping everything in balance. They were allowing a lot of the short gains, and they were still failing to project Justin Herbert at this point. You add up all of those things, and they were able to get some first down conversions on this drive, but they took way too much time off. You got to the 2-minute warning, and at that point, they faced 4th and 9 with Milton Williams promptly shedding off Mekhi Becton Sr. like it was nothing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And to think that they had gotten that man in the, free agency pool last offseason for what they thought at the time was a bargain, to have him put together a terrible performance overall in the year as an offensive lineman, and then have your season end like that with him just getting bullied by Milton Williams in the interior, and have him pummel Justin Herbert straight into the fucking dirt, man. Like, that was a wrap. That was a wrap. And the Patriots would win 16-3. In possibly the least eventful game of the entire bunch. But, I mean, hey, it's Drake May's first playoff win. It is their first playoff win as well since, I believe, 2019. So, they start off this new era, having a bit of trouble last season with being able to really get into much of a rhythm at all. And you have a complete and total 180 this season. Regardless of how easy their schedule might have been in the regular season, they were certainly tested with a strong unit in the Chargers in this game, and they prevail. That's what ends up mattering the most. That's what people are going to take into account when it comes to this thing. And Drake May, after having a half where he had his lowest completion percentage in a single half in his career, he finished the game going something like 11 of his last 16 passes or something like that, and would have 17 of 29 completion on 58.6% completion with 268 passing yards, a touchdown, and an interception. You probably want to see him, adjust a little better to pressure in postseason play, but again, for his first game, for him to have enough awareness at times to bail out of it and extend the play, like, that is an impressive showing still, even if the numbers won't tell it to you. As a whole, led by Drake May, the Patriots had 146 rushing yards on the ground on a even 5 yards a carry. Ramondre Stevenson was also the leading receiver out of the backfield with 3 receptions for 75 yards, and Kayshon Boutte had 4 receptions for 66 yards, while Hunter Henry had 3 receptions for 64 yards, and a touchdown. Craig Woodson, one of the California rookies who are safeties in this team, he had 11 tackles and 5 solo in this game, along with a TFL. As for the Chargers, man, 159 yards for Justin Herbert, no touchdown passes, no interceptions, 61.3% completion. Just pure ass. Passive play. They tried to protect them a lot with the play calling, while understanding that the personnel was not going to allow for that shit to happen. And I will say that, at some point, the Bucs gotta stop, because Justin Herbert is now going on year 7. Year 7, mind you. Without a single playoff win. They keep putting out this graphic stating that he and Jawan Jennings have the same amount of passing touchdowns in the playoffs with 2 each. And that, at a point, you can have all this going down. You can have Brandon Staley literally being the equivalent of a football terrorist. We understood that. You get Harbaugh in there, and he's his biggest champion entering the entire media day process and everything. He's 100% supporting him throughout this time. You put the weapons around him, and he puts together a solid year last year. Very efficient year, even if it was conservative by nature, but he does a great job of protecting the football, then proceeds to do that horseshit against the Texans in the wild card. You have him this season yes, the attrition works against him, but he still muscles out a pretty good record. He still gets himself in a scenario where, oh, hey, I could, get my first playoff win against a quarterback with less experience, and you still have that quarterback outplay you on a massive scale. Even with Drake May being susceptible to the same kind of pressure from the Chargers unit, he was still able to overcome those weak links and get the job done. Like, what is it going to take for Herbert at that point if you're constantly finding yourself in this cycle and you are always coming up short in the playoffs when it matters? Like, it's just crazy. They're going to have a tough time answering that question. As a whole, the Chargers combined for 87 yards on the ground and 4 yards a pop. Meanwhile, Matt McConkey had 3 receptions for 32 yards, and Arondé Gatson had 3 receptions for 30 yards. I will say, though, it doesn't help that, again, Keenan Allen had caught just 3 of his 8 targets, along with a few drops in there. Nobody's expecting that. But, oh my gosh, like, it's crazy. All these damn hypothetical man shits. But when it's time to put that shit into motion, you can't find Herbert anywhere. And I understand that, again, he got banged up severely. They were on his shit. No lie. But, man, again, you could argue the same thing for the other side. And they overcame it regardless. So something's got to give at some point for him. As for Deion Henley, he had 13 tackles along with 9 solo tackles, an interception, and a pass deflection in this game as well. Anything else here? No. Okay. Moving on to the Texans and the Steelers, and oh my fucking gosh, there are so many different ways to go with this one. We're going to look at this from the perspective of the Texans first. I mean, that is right. They were by and far the winners in this game. There's no doubt about it. You can't just make this all about the Steelers, and yes, there are obvious narratives there, but you can't make it all about them in that situation. Like, you have to give the Texans their respect. Their defense came as advertised. They quite literally, I don't even know if I can phrase it in this way, but you know what the fuck they did to Aaron Rodgers, and it was easy too. What made them think that guys like Mason McCormick and Dylan Cook, who again is still a rookie at this point of time, what made him think that they were going to last against the likes of Anderson Jr. and Hunter on that edge, Togiai and other defensive linemen like Sheldon Rankins up front in the interior? It's like, dude, they stood no chance. They limited that run game all day long. The one thing that they understood coming into this game, the Steelers could probably have an advantage in because of how terrible their rushing offense had been for most of the season, really, with Nick Chubb missing all that time, with Joe Mixon still being out. They made both Kenneth Gainwell and Jaylen Warren, as far as rushing, non-factors. And that, no matter how things were going offensively for this team, that won them the game right there, along with that dynamic-ass pass rush. But thinking about this as well, man, it wasn't the cleanest day at the office, to say the least. And it shows a lot of the resilience that the Texans did have in this game, but you can't excuse 5 fumbles and a turn or an interception as well from CJ Stroud in this game. You can't be excused. Because with some of these fumbles, man, even if he got them back, like, these are situations where you're looking at CJ Stroud, you see him zoomed in on a couple of these occasions, and he is not even looking at the snap at all. He's actively watching and reading something else on the field, and you're confused in that situation, because then you have the other lineman trying to signal to him and say, okay, we're ready to snap it now, and nobody's on the same page. Worst possible scenario in a number of situations here. Now, some of them as well were warranted. You had them try to go for a flea flicker here, and it was kind of late initially, but hey, you had Jack Sawyer, the former teammate of CJ Stroud's, mind you, getting a sack fumble on him early. And you also had a scenario where, as the game went on, you had another situation where they had an opportunity to go up, I guess, mightily, as the second quarter was taking place. And you have Keanu Benton get his hands on CJ Stroud for a sack fumble as well to give them a short field to work with. Not to mention this interception to open up the third quarter for CJ Stroud. I don't know, like you're driving in territory and you had already been dealing with a weird scenario to end off the half where, I don't know, he could not get shots down the field early on. Like, there were some great looks to Jalen Noel, there were some great looks to Nico Collins, and these are routine passes that honestly any quarterback in the league can hit. That's always been the case for CJ Stroud, though, when it comes to overthrows, but brutal times to have them, to say the least. Then you get into this scenario, you're driving, and you have just the weirdest pass ever. He tries to, like, throw it across his shoulder, I guess, and he just lobs a low throw right in Brandon Eccles' direction for some reason to gift the Steelers the ball back. But still, while any player could easily be rattled by something like that going on, and D'Amico Ryans, with the amount of mistakes that were piling up, his ass was certainly getting frustrated. But you know what? They stuck through, they stayed the course, and they got the job done. Jalen Pitre is a fucking beast, man. Yes, we talk about the pass rush. It's warranted. We understand that Derek Stingley Jr. and Kamari Lassiter are already a pair of corners that are some of the best in the NFL. And I don't think there's really much debating that. Like, Lassiter, I don't know. He has had scenarios where he's gotten beat, and so did Derek Stingley Jr. in this game. But with their skill sets on both sides, and to have them as a perfect 1 and 2 complement, man, that is exceptional work by the Texans. They have been killing the draft over the past few years, and it's finally starting to show for a team overall that had been pretty much an afterthought in the NFL for pretty much most of their existence, and especially a few years after Deshaun Watson left. Them niggas are still kicking themselves, by the way, the Browns, in terms of losing all that draft capital, losing all of that fucking money to one nigga, and giving up all those resources to the Texans for them to go out and utilize it on acquiring this talent all over the place. Like, that defense has very few weak links. So it's no question to say that Pitre is, well, one of the best fucking safeties in the NFL. I've been saying this shit for years. And y'all have got to understand it. Like, yeah, he might wear the Guardian cap. It's not for him, nigga. He will fucking fly over the place and lay you out in a heartbeat. And that's exactly what he was doing on a couple occasions in this game. Like, you had sequences where the Steelers were trying to set up the short game, and he's just zooming in like a speeding bullet, hitting niggas in the backfield. That's how they teach you to make those kinds of fucking tackles. It's textbook. And then you had that kind of effort spreading down to other players as well. Jalen Reed, I should say. so many Jalen's, Jadens with this team specifically, right? Jalen Reed, the rookie from Penn State, would go out for a little bit of time, and they had Miles Bryant step in the game. They didn't miss a step. They did not miss a fucking step, no matter who was in alongside Pitre, man. They were getting it done all throughout the course of the night. And it always felt for a while, with those turnovers, that the Steelers, if they had operated any better on their own end, they had an opportunity to come back into this game. It was there. But, man, that they were unrelenting. It would have been easy for them, with the way that some of these possessions were going, to get tired, to get gassed. No, they kept their foot on the fucking gas pedal, and ultimately would put the game on ice early in the fourth quarter with having Will Anderson just completely, again, bully his man and just crush Aaron Rodgers in the backfield. Poor Aaron Rodgers. You would have Rankins get there too, and Rankins managed to pull the ball out of the pile and go for a scoop six of like 57 yards. Shit was crazy. That got to think that was what got the action started for Houston in this one. It's insane to think about, aside from the aforementioned touchdown that they had earlier to Christian Kirk. We'll get into him in a bit. Oh my gosh, like, just an exceptional game from those guys, man. Truly. I mean, hey, man. That they deserve all the credit in the world. It's a Super Bowl caliber defense. We've been saying that. They played like it when they absolutely needed to. When it would have been easy for them to, I guess, kind of wilt under pressure. A lot of it. Like, that's a tough burden to have on your shoulders when your offense is doing next to nothing for the most part of the game. But they would eventually settle into that point. And it's not like they were completely inept. Because, to round it off for them, when you look at the likes of Christian Kirk and also Woody Marks in this game, guys that you were not really expecting to be X factors in any capacity of this ball game, they were consistent in this match. They were consistent. And even with Christian Kirk, after a while, Porter Jr. was kind of doing an okay job on Nico Collins between, a balance of good coverage and also just some general miscommunication with CJ Stroud. It got to a point where Nico Collins got concussed and you had other receivers starting to take on that matchup. And when the time came for him to have his number called and step up in this relief, oh my gosh. They truly, man, oh my gosh. They looked his way, and more often than not, they found success. He had 8 catches for 144 yards in this game. He had a deep 46-yard grab to set them up perfectly for what would eventually be a touchdown drive for them, I believe. So I was like, damn. Like, if you got all that going down, at that point, man, like, what can you truly do? And on this, I guess, dagger of a drive here, 5 minutes, 51 seconds of action, he also got a 33-yard gain here to move them down the field, with them ultimately getting it done with Woody Marks rushing for a 13-yard score. So, all-around credit to him, and Marks specifically, he had a 19 rushing attempt game with 112 yards and a touchdown. The focus was primarily going to be on him, and even when they tried to balance it out with Nick Chubb, they figured he wasn't going to get as much explosiveness out of his touches as Marks has been able to, even in, like, just weirder scenarios. So for him to step up like this as well, he, again, is a 24-year-old rookie, so he's definitely going to have that experience, understood, but, man, for him to pull that off in this scenario is absolutely impressive to me, to say the least. So, all in all, you have to give the Texans credit here. But, man, oh my gosh. So, for the Steelers' perspective, it adds even more questions to it, because I just saw something earlier where Aaron Rodgers cursed out a reporter after getting several Mike Tomlin questions. And then I just see, as I'm recording this on my phone, per both Adam Schefter and Jeremy Fowler, that Mike Tomlin is stepping down as the Steelers head coach. As of right now, as of the recording of this video, he is stepping down. And they will be looking, at the very least, to find a new voice in that locker room. A week after John Harbaugh was fired, Mike Tomlin meets a similar but different fate. They're not coming out and saying that he is outright fired. They would not do that to a man who has provided that much for this organization, but mutually parting ways is probably what you could chalk that up to being here. And honestly, after the way it looked last night, after the way it has looked over the past decade in terms of playoff performance, something had to give. Let me just throw this out there, okay? Because it just puts all of this into perspective. With 7 consecutive playoff losses, Mike Tomlin is now tied for the most consecutive losses in a playoff game, or in playoff games rather, for a head coach with Marvin Lewis. That Marvin Lewis, formerly of the Bengals, who had that streak from 2005 to 2015. We all remember, and we're all dragging on Marvin Lewis at that point for not being able to take the Bengals over the top, despite them having been blessed at that period of time with the likes of Carson Palmer, Andy Dalton, AJ Green, solid defensive players. Chad Johnson, you can go up and down the list of valuable players to that organization in that decade span. And they could not reach the mountaintop. They couldn't even get past the wild card in some of these situations. It's fucking crazy shit. Well, the Steelers have found themselves in a similar boat with Mike Tomlin. And that is not a situation you want to find yourself being a part of. And again, the most crazy thing about it is that, again, this could literally, I think people were saying it too, that this process would have been expedited if they had lost last week to the Ravens, as they probably should have. Like, we've still had people saying, hey, they probably did not deserve to be in this situation at all. They didn't deserve to win that game. And I will concede, like, I'm a neutral guy here. If the Ravens at full health against this Texans team would face off in this scenario, I could guarantee you they'd probably play them way better than whatever the hell went on with the Steelers. Because I threw out all those numbers about how they forced C.J. Stroud into 5 fumbles, about how they forced him into an interception, about how they kept the Texans' offense largely at bay. And it looked like things were turning. They keep mentioning as well throughout this entire time that they'd been outscored 73-0 in the first quarters of these consecutive playoff losses, at least through the first 6. Nothing much really happened at that point. They had the lead. It was a defensive battle like it was expected to be. Things were going according to plan. And then they just could not, as it has been for pretty much most of the season, especially when it comes to some of their losses, man, they could not generate anything. Now, these numbers probably look a little different. These numbers probably look a little bit different, just a little bit different, with, the full game being played out at this point. But it mentioned at a time that the Steelers, after the first couple takeaways that they had in this game against the Texans, you want to know how much they were really able to move the ball after those possessions? 10 plays, 9 yards. In what universe is that okay? Never. Never, bro. Like, even if you want to chalk that up to being on the offensive coordinator, at some point, dude, you have to get that together from a coaching aspect and be able to break through that. There is absolutely no way you can get away with doing something like that. Even worse, because I guess I can look at the overall game, in terms of, for third downs and things like that on ESPN. Essentially, the Steelers, for the very first time in a first half in a playoff game since 1989, they did not convert a single third down. So you are already having struggles of getting separation in the first place, and they got DK Metcalf back. Oh my goodness. Like, one of the very first few plays, they got DK Metcalf on a long-ass screen route, and he virtually was not able to do much of anything else in the game due to some drops and due to some tough overthrows from Aaron Rodgers. Fair enough. But my gosh, man, your only shot at getting that to go is now gone, taken off the board, and you can't run the ball, and you can't convert third downs in the damn playoffs. Like, what exactly is going on to where we're still having that trouble? We're still having that problem in the wild card. Can't have it. Can't have it in that situation. It's crazy, man. Like, the Steelers' defense, they did fine. They did fine. Honestly. They hung in there for as much as they could. They truly did. To force the Texans into that scenario, where they have to do something so astronomically great to even come out with the win in the first place, that deserves a lot of credit as well. Like, I am shocked that Joey Porter Jr. actually played a solid game of disciplined football for the most part. They were able to get the pressure that they needed to on CJ Stroud at times. But there were other moments where he was unfazed. And, I mean, hey, bro. All I gotta say from that standpoint is, well, and ironically enough, being the Steelers reporter, the same Brooke Pryor that was one of the very many reporters that came after that Jags reporter for having those compliments about Liam Cohen's season is the same Brooke Pryor that had to just break that damn news on an ESPN article. So I wonder if she herself kept that same energy, having to write that same story, having to be in the press conference with what would be Mike Tomlin's last and what could be, although again, I don't want to jump to conclusions there. At least the news came out that Tomlin resigned. Fine. I don't want to assume that this is Aaron Rodgers' last game at all. If it is, it would be a tough way to go out. But if it isn't, okay. Nonetheless, how is she thinking about this in this perspective? Because, hey, are you going to be a reporter as a fellow Steelers reporter to lean into the status quo and just drag on every single one of these members of the Steelers organization and not commend them on getting to the playoffs at all? Or would you at least say, hey, this was a good year. We got in the position we wanted to, and we had them right where we wanted them. Unfortunately, we just didn't finish, but I want to commend you on a good season, Mike Tomlin. I wonder if that's something that she said in that press conference. Because I tell you right now, like, the Jags reporter again, in that situation, she's not trying to cater to anybody at all. She was legitimately speaking the truth about Liam Cohen's season. Meanwhile, again, you have niggas still questioning how the fuck the Steelers got even in this position in the first place. So it was already up for debate as to whether or not they deserve to be here. And people would question you if you said that. You probably wouldn't want that smoke. And you'd be lying your ass off. For you to again have the expectations that this team had coming into this season. You're getting Aaron Rodgers in free agency. You're acquiring the most expensive defense in the NFL. And you have a ton of veterans at your disposal. You fall through that early rut in the season. You have to claw your way back in to getting the AFC North title. And then you have to win it by the grace of God himself. With a priest shaking holy water over in the field. You have to win it in that fashion. And then when you get into the time of year to fully assert your dominance as a team, you give up 23 points in the fourth quarter. Just think about that for a second. Maybe you did have them exactly where you wanted them, but it's about playing a full 60 minutes of ball. And you gave up that kind of run in the final quarter of the game. So I'm sure that she is being tested as we speak. And that makes that tweet, along with some of the other ones, age horribly in that situation. Trying to come after the Jags reporter like that for just being a compassionate person. Meanwhile, you are now actively having to struggle, especially if you're in the Steelers brass. You're going to have to struggle with potentially balancing doing that same thing and also being a fair and rational journalist. Because they flat out looked as though they got their ass kicked, and they did get their ass kicked in that fourth quarter. I have constantly said that it was a much closer game than it appeared to be on paper, but you can't excuse that kind of fourth quarter performance, and overall, as a team, they didn't even net 200 total yards in this game. So what are we actually talking about here? What are we doing? Okay? You can't excuse any of that at all. So I would love to see how she handles that situation, because it's pretty ironic to, have a season that warrants praise, get completely, or have compliments for a season that warrants the praise, get shunned by so many people, again, just hating ass niggas, but then you will have everybody, and deservedly so, coming for the Steelers in this situation. And how exactly are you, as a Steelers, I guess, kind of affiliate in this way, going to handle that? That's going to be very interesting for me to see. And depending on how it goes, again, like you're a genuine hypocrite, or there's some general understanding here of maybe not having anything be wrong with a little bit of compassion at times. Because Tomlin, again, like, I don't even need to pull up his accomplishments. You know what his accomplishments are. You know how much he's meant to this team for so many years. It's tough to see him have to be in a situation where he has to amicably split with a team that he has built over the past 20 years and change. With him just recently becoming, one of the few coaches, I think, with like a certain amount of wins in Steelers history, or like 300 wins in his NFL career. Let me just make sure about that real quick. Let me see. Hold on. Yeah, let me see real quick. Yeah, non-losing seasons, 193 wins on his career. So, again, the accomplishments are there for him overall. But again, that non-losing stuff is not going to cut it, especially when you get slaughtered in the playoffs like this year after year after year after year after year. The standard is the standard, but that standard, this is going to sound crazy, the standard has to have shifted over the past few years. Because if we keep settling for all these 9-8, 10-7, 8-9 records, we're not going anywhere as a team. We're not genuinely taking a step forward. We're not genuinely being seen as championship contenders in that scenario. And I think that's where the Steelers were at. Or, again, this could have been a decision, if we're breaking this law, there's no telling. Maybe this is a decision that, again, Mike Tomlin was afforded to make as a guy who's accomplished that much with a team. Maybe he felt the same way too. He has put everything into coaching this roster, and they have not gone anywhere essentially for the past 10 years. Like, he's a great coach. He knows he's a great coach. And, he can step down. If he is open to other jobs, he's most certainly going to find another job elsewhere. I don't think there's a doubt about that at all. I don't think he's stepping away from coaching completely. If he enters the pool of the coaching cycle for this offseason, he's just as highly sought after as John Harbaugh is right now. But with this team, he's done pretty much everything that he can do. And that is a tough admission to make as a person at times, let alone being a head coach. So I guess at that point he decided earlier today, okay, he's going to call it with this team, and he's going to step down, and he's going to allow them to move forward and have another person take over in that locker room. But it is tough. Still, though, you look at that on-field production and the whole identity of the Steelers, man. It withered away. You heard nothing of it. They weren't to be seen or heard from in this game. That's how dominant that the Texans' defense was against them. And ultimately, when it mattered most, when you had opportunities to take yourselves into, a potential victory here, you gave up 23 points in the final stage of the game like that. It can't happen, man. Wow. What a piece of news there. Of course, I'll have to work on getting some of the other ones together as I go through everything. But for now, that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.